Morning. I'm here to share a reflection on today's Moravian text, which is Matthew 21, verses 33 to 46. Now, this is part of a continuing dialogue, another one of Jesus' dialogues with the teachers of the law about his authority. So if you can imagine, there's three groups here. There's three participants in this scene. There's Jesus. There are the people that are around him, listening to what's going on, sort of bystanders and his disciples, just listening to the dialogue. And then there are the teachers of the law who are also there. So what Jesus is doing is he's addressing the crowd, but in doing so, he's also addressing the teachers of the law. So it's a little bit of theatre there. And it's starting off a discussion about his authority, but it's evolving into a discussion about who the teachers of the law are and how they should be interacting with what God is doing. And this passage is the parable of the tenants and the vineyard. Some of the parables we get in the New Testament are quite hard to understand because we live in an urban society where not many people are involved in farming. And so some of the metaphors and analogies that Jesus uses are difficult for us to appreciate. This one, however, is very clear cut for us. We can see exactly what's going on here. Basically, someone owns a vineyard and the people who are attending it are stitching him up. Now, I suppose the modern equivalent would be, say, for example, someone owned in the city centre, like a building, a project building where smaller businesses could rent space and use the building for their business. And then the person who owns the building says, well, I've come to collect my rent. And those tenants decide to beat up the people who come and collect the rent. And eventually it results with them actually murdering the son of the person who owns the building. Now, in modern society, we would call that organised criminality, or as the Line of Duty would say, be an OCG. These would be gangsters. These would be people who are right outside what we consider to be acceptable participation in society. And what Jesus is saying is that the teachers of the law are just like that. And in doing so, he's using a rhetorical device called pathos, where he's stirring our emotions and our antagonism to these tenants, and making us react to them and making us have a strong reaction to their behaviour in order to get a really strong point across, using the story to stir our emotions. And the point that he's getting across is very simple. The way things are being done now is wrong, and a huge change is on its way. And the people who are resisting that change are like gangsters, murderers. The old is being surpassed by a spiritual revolution, and you must stop resisting it, or you are acting as someone who is effectively engaged in really criminal behaviour. Now, also as an aside, as part of this, because he talks about the son being killed, he's making a prophecy about his own death. Then Jesus goes on, as part of this dialogue, or to conclude what he's saying, to quote Psalm 118, verse 22, where he says, the stone the builders has rejected has become the capstone. The Lord has done this, and it's become marvellous in our eyes. Now, in some translations, you might find cornerstone. In some translations, you might find capstone. Actually, I think Jesus goes on to make the point that he's kind of referring to both. And the cornerstone is one of the vital bricks of the building because it's the first one that gets laid. It's the foundation stone, and it's what makes the building get off to a good start. The capstone is one of the final pieces of the puzzle, one of the final things where it all comes together, and it's the culmination, the crowning glory of the building. And basically what Jesus is saying here is that the stone the builders found in a skip turns out to be the most important stone of all. Now, we wouldn't necessarily ever think that. The stuff that's in the skip, the stuff that's about to go to the tip, is the stuff that's definitely been rejected as being unfit for use. And so it's great that Jesus is making this very clear that no, the stuff that is being rejected is actually the most vital and the most important. And then he goes on to say that you can stumble over the foundation, or the capstone can fall on you and crush you. Actually, verse 43 probably should go ahead of verse 42 because it makes the whole passage flow just a little bit nicer. So effectively, what Jesus is saying is you need to align with me. You need to align with what I'm doing. You need to align and get yourself aligned with what God is doing. There's no scope for being sort of in the middle, for being midway. You are either aligned with what God is doing or you are resisting it. And there are consequences to that. If you align with God, you're safe, effectively. You're not going to stumble and you're not going to be crushed. But if you resist, you are at risk of both those things. So in some ways, you could almost describe it as an appeal to the Pharisees, saying, no, get in line with what God is doing. Because if you don't, there will be consequences. Now, the Pharisees have reacted to this very negatively. They don't like being identified with criminals. They don't like being identified with the tenants in the vineyard. And so this is the point at which they were thinking about how to deal with this person once and for all, because this couldn't go on as far as they were concerned. But for today, I think the question for us is, how are we aligning with God? Are there areas where we are going against what we know is right, where we know what God is doing? Are there areas where we are refusing to make sure that we are not going to trip over the foundation, we're not going to get crushed by the capstone? And so my prayer is that you would just have wisdom in your life, that you would always be looking to see what God is doing and seeing about how you can align with his will for you and his will for the people around you. Well, I hope you have a great day and maybe see you very soon. Bye-bye.